thank you for the organizers of this opportunity to participate. 4 years ago, I was in Krakow in a similar conference and overdid my time at that moment. Maybe I can make up for that mistake now, a bit shorter one. Well, Arkadiusz Wagner told that I'm from Tampere University. My professional status is university instructor in journalism, mainly in the ethics of journalism, and my background is also in journalism. But I have been a member of the Finnish Exlibris Association from the late 1970s, and I was the president of that organization from 2000 to 2014. Now I'm vice president, and on international level, I'm from 2016. I've been the general secretary of PSI, but we don't go to the situation of PSI here. It's about Exlibris associations in Finland compared to historical development in association in other countries. As Mark Ferson told, the first one was in Great Britain, Exlibris Society, and other European countries had their associations started in the 1890s. At that moment in Finland, the Exlibris movement was not really there. Finnish artists like Axel Gallen, later Akseli Gallen-Kalala, and his student Hugo Simberg started to make Exlibris, modern Exlibris designs in that period of time, and they were also published in some international magazines, in the Studio magazine Mark Ferson mentioned, and also in the Versagrum, the Austrian magazine, in about 1900. So the Finnish collecting of Exlibris can be searched to about that time period. The international movement of Exlibris collecting, Exlibris associations affected also Finland, but at that moment the Finnish society was also in a bit different situation. We were under the Russian rule, although somehow independent part of that we thought, but the independence came up only 1917. So in that Russian ruled Finland, we were struggling for some of our freedoms also. And the artistic movement also kind of represented the unique nature of Finnish people and Finnish art. And it was also introduced in the French International Exhibition in 1899, 1900. As Mark Ferson told, in Australia, the Exlibris Society was established in 1923, and the American Society of Booklet Collectors and Designers started in 1922. And there were some societies in USA before that, but and also they had competitions, publications, and exhibitions before 1922. So the history is longer there. But the interesting thing with Northern Europe, especially Scandinavia, is that the association started in 1930s, 1940s. And we can think that the activities in the 1920s and later in 1930s in making Exlibris in these countries was the reason that the collectors became active also. In Finland, we had a second golden age of Exlibris in the late 1920s by artists such as Erkki Tanttu, Vilho Askola, and others. And the collectors took upon to get all the possible Exlibris on their possession and then exchange with each other. The reason that they didn't formally make associations, organizations for this was that they were individuals who could exchange in meeting each other or by mail exchange and didn't really need any formal organization for that. In Scandinavia, we can find in Sweden, Svenska Exlibrisföreningen in 1934, in Denmark, Dansk Exlibrisselskab in 1941, and in Norway in 1943. The example of Sweden must be the reason that the Danish and Norwegian also wanted their own associations, but it's interesting that Denmark and Norway were at those moments occupied by German forces, and it is a bit of a discussion how these associations came about just at that time. Was it a kind of trying to establish something from their own country, or was there some cooperation with the occupation forces? The Norwegian experience was short-lived. They decided in 1961 that this association is not useful tool for the Exlibris movement, and they decided to end the association. Swedish and Danish associations are active, but they have the problems that many associations have. The old magnificent collectors are old or even dead, and new collectors don't come. Many can get knowledge of Exlibris or bookplates from the internet and exchange via mail or only collect the images from internet, and if possible then ask if they can get the real copy of that. Here in Finland, the collecting of Exlibris can be traced back to the late 19th century. In Arne Jörgensen's book, the Exlibris in Finland, Bokeikamärken in Finland, in 1916, there are indications of already a long tradition. I mean, long as maybe 20 years of collectors, but no real indication of where he thinks the collecting started. In 1920s, we can find also evidence of Exlibris collecting in general magazines dedicated to collecting, those mainly collecting postage stamps, philately, but also there are some international contacts. We can find one interesting was from 1921, when a German collector wrote to the Pharmaceutical Society of Finland asking if there are any Exlibris on the subject of pharmacy or apothecary, and I don't know if he got any answers, but there were pharmacists who had Exlibris at that moment in Finland, so possibly he got some answers. One interesting establishment when we consider the Finnish Exlibris associations is association called Nuoren Voiman Liitto. Nuori Voima means young force of the strength of youth in English. There was a magazine started in 1908, and it became in 1910s an important base for hobbyists of literature, art, music, photography, and other hobbies, also technical hobbies. In that period of time, for instance, radio was developing, and it was kind of possible to build your own radio in the 1920s. So this magazine was discussing and receiving articles about different hobbies, also Exlibris, making Exlibris, and then collecting Exlibris. Around this magazine, the society, Nuoren Voiman Liitto, Union of the Young Force, was established, and in that society, there were members who were also bibliophiles and Exlibris collectors, and they started what was called Nuoren Voiman Liiton kirjanystäväin harrastuspiiri, freely translated Union of Young Force Book Lovers Hobby Circle, and it's as complicated in Finnish as it is in that English tradition. But they were collecting books and book plates, or some of them were collecting book plates and books and book plates. Some collected only books, but maybe also there were in those books book plates. This 1932 started circle was active, but it had some restrictions. To get the membership, one had to apply for it in writing, and they had to have some recommendations from others why this person should be a member of this circle. And it was also meant to be only for collectors. The artists, the designers were not included in this circle. So those same people collecting Exlibris and in this circle founded in 1932 were also part of the movement who decided in early 1946 to start a new association, Suomen Exlibrisyhdistys, a Finnish Exlibris Association, in Swedish, Finska Exlibrisförening. And when they started, they thought that it would be maybe 30, 40 persons. But at the end of December, the same year, they had already 130 members. The activities were exchanging booklets via mail and in some meetings. There was a bulletin which was mailed to all the members, and in some newspapers also the meetings were announced. The special thing for this association was that from the beginning it was also for artists, not only for collectors but also artists. and it was the first one in Finland to put these two people together. In many ways, many artists were also collectors, and some collectors were amateur artists, but still. 1946, the Second World War was just ended. Finland was under the rule of the Commission to actively monitor the democracy of Finland from Soviet Union and United Kingdom, and we were a bit afraid of our independence. Finland was never occupied during the Second World War, but we lost a large amount of land in Karelia, and 1/10 of our population had to move from Karelia to the main part that remained Finland. During this time, all the things were rationed, and one of the things that was rationed was coffee. We got some help for that in the person of Captain Carl Salmonsson from Sweden, the president of the Swedish Exlibris Association at that time. He had in the 30s collected also Finnish Exlibris and was very helpful for from his materials we could get valuable information for the list of Finnish Exlibris and cataloging them. And in one meeting note, there is a mention that the coffee for the meeting was from Carl Salmonsson, and it was mentioned that the participants were very thankful of that. This young association connected directly to the Nordic associations and soon participated in Stockholm, Sweden, to Nordic Exlibris exhibition. In association materials, there are also Belgian Exlibris portfolios, Portuguese magazines, etc. So it was active also in international level from the start. But it took to 1976 when Finns applied and then were accepted to the international association FISAI. But we know that there were Finnish participants earlier in FISAI conferences and the European conferences that were held before that time. 1978 in Lugano was the first official delegation from Finland. In one of the slides, there was a mention of the Estonian experience, the Tallinn club of Exlibris, and there have been several Exlibris clubs around the small country of Estonia. And we know that during the Second World War, the country was occupied by Soviet and German forces, and then again Soviet forces. And after the war, it remained part of Soviet Union until 1991. And during that time, some of the cities were not free for travel. One example was Tartu. There was a military airfield in Tartu, and even the Estonians had to apply a permission to enter that city. Give a reason why.
Excuse me, Mr. Ylonen, time. You have just 2 or 3 minutes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. The experience of Estonian is important, that they had several clubs around the country, and they meet every year in different city. And this was background of the idea, I think, when the second Finnish Exlibris Association was started in Turku area, Exlibris Avoensis in 1992. This was accepted to FISA in 1994. and is now the larger of the two Finnish associations. And it held also the FISA Congress in Naantali 2012. The older association has now some 150 members, and Exlibris Aboensis around 300 members, and many are members of the both. And why I'm talking about this is that this year we celebrate 75 years of Finnish Exlibris Association, 90 years from the experience of Nuoren Voimaliitto, and 30 years of Exlibris Aboensis next year. And this is some of the literature. And Dziękuję, thank you for listening to my talk. And thank you again for the organizers for this possibility.